Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to check out the solo stamina Necromancer build for the Greymore chapter. You will find all the timestamps in the description below for each section, and there is also a written guide on the website alcasthq.com. Also description. I just released a video soloing City of Ash 2 veteran mode with hard mode with this setup. So you can use this to solo dungeons, you can also use it for overland, public dungeons, whatever floats your boat, it will work. Now you need to understand the mechanics behind this build, so I will go through this very in depth. If you want the fast lane, written guide on the website. When we look at the stat sheet, two stats are very important here, max health and stamina recovery. I always recommend having around 19k health for a solo build. Stamina recovery depends. Usually when I'm fully buffed, I would expect around 1800 to 2200 is a good fit. The reason why we need this high recovery, we dodge roll a lot, we block, we have to heal, we have to deal damage and all that stuff. Especially dodge rolling is like one of our primary ways to avoid damage, especially on boss fights. A boss that deals a lot of damage, you can basically negate the damage by just dodge rolling. So you need to learn when to dodge roll, when to block, and so on. For me, I played the game for a long time, over 5 years. I know what attacks are coming in, so I know most of the bosses what they do. As a new player, you probably don't. But then there's a thing called learning. So if you actually learn how bosses react with the attacks they have, you will start to understand when you have to dodge roll, when you have to block, when you have to run away, and so on. That's just a learning process. I'm using the Lover Mundo Stone just to give me more penetration. It's the best stat for a solo build, so I would always recommend the Lover. Buff food wise, there's two important things. A lot of new players are like just people that follow builds often don't use the right buff food because they don't have it. Now this one you can get it from the guild store. It's very cheap, it barely costs anything. This one gives you 5k stamina and 500 stamina recovery. That's why we can pump up our stamina recovery that much. It doesn't have health, but we have other ways of getting health through attributes like health enchantments and stuff like that. I will get into that later. So yes, the buff food, very important. Potions, it's the same thing. You want to get these potions if you do more difficult solo content. If you're just doing overland and public dungeons, you're totally fine with the Essence of Stamina potions, which are basically the basic ones. You get, like, monsters drop them, or you can buy them very cheap in the store. However, if you want to solo more difficult content, I highly recommend getting the Essence of Weapon Power. Because you get Major Brutality, Major Savagery, and Major Endurance. 20% more weapon damage, 10% more weapon crit, 20% more stamina recovery. That's insane. In combination with this, you need Alchemy, medicinal use. 30% more, a longer duration on the potions. If you don't have that, they're only lasting for like 35 seconds. And with this here, we can get the 100% uptime on these buffs, because a potion cooldown is 45 seconds. All endgame players activate potions every 45 seconds. So the sooner you get used to this, the better. Just keep hammering the potion button every 45 seconds to reactivate the potions, because of all these juicy buffs. So these two things are very important. I made a separate article on the website as well, where I kind of teach or like explain, okay, why is buff food important, potions, why is damage mitigation important, and things like that. It's also in the description below. So that's this. In terms of race, all stamina based races work, so Orc, Redguard, Wood Elf, Dark Elf, Khajiit, Imperial, they all work. Because they all have stamina based stats. The reason why I prefer the Orc, you get 2k max stamina, you get 258 weapon damage, and you get 1000 extra health. So it's purely damage orientated with a little bit extra health. So for example, if you're playing a Red Guard or a Wood Elf, you will have a little bit less health. So you can just put more points into the health attribute. So you'll get better sustain because you run a Red Guard or a Wood Elf, which has more sustain passives. I also have a racial guide on the website, link in the description. And I made a video recently about it, just talking about all the perks different races have. That's this. So Orc overall, I love it, but all stamina based setups will work. Should you be a vampire or a werewolf? Vampire is a no-go, but werewolf is very nice on any stamina based setup. It also got buffed like crazy, so I can definitely recommend it. If you want, go for it. Next up we come to the gear. Now the gear is a little bit more tricky. This here is a tier 1 setup. I have a tier 2 setup and a beginner setup on the website as well in the written guide. I will explain to you why I love this setup. Torgwyn, Briarheart and Torvokun. Just as a heads up, if you don't have Torvokun, it's not that big of a deal. You could run Bloodspawn, it's my secondary choice. Gives you ultimate regen and it boosts your resistances, so you have a little bit more damage mitigation. Really nice. You could also run Stormfist, which deals damage, or Selene, which deals again damage. I will talk about Torvokun in a second, why it's my favorite one. So first off, do you need gold gear and jewelry? No, you don't. Do you need a gold weapon? Yes, you do. Why? The reason why a gold weapon is important, from purple quality to gold quality, you gain like 200-300 extra damage. So it just boosts your overall damage like crazy. However, blue, purple or gold jewelry, barely any difference. So it doesn't really matter whether you have blue or purple or gold. Now the higher you can go, the better in the end. Because, I'm not sure, do I have a purple jewelry? A green one. So you can see here it has robust 790 max stamina, whereas a gold one has 870. That's barely like a difference. It's such a small difference. So it doesn't matter whether you have blue, purple or gold. Briarheart, for example, blue jewelry, very cheap. That, like, you can get it for a very cheap price in the guild store. Purple one, already more expensive. You need to decide for yourself whether you have money or not. But yeah, gold weapon, important. Armor and jewelry, not that much. Because the armor has the same thing. You don't really gain a lot of stats by, like, golding it out. So purple is more than enough. I run all divines, just to boost my Mundus Stone more. However, because this build, like any solo build, you dodge roll a lot. You could actually run 2 well-fitted pieces to reduce dodge roll cost further. Because dodge rolling, again, the best damage mitigation because you're not gonna get hit at all. Beautiful. But you can also just run divine, it will be totally fine. I run 6 medium, 1 heavy, just to get a little bit extra resistances. Now let's talk about the sets. Briarheart, why do I love this thing so much? When you deal critical damage, you have a 25% chance to increase your weapon damage by 450 for 10 seconds. That's already really nice, but that's not the main thing why I love it so much. While this effect is active, your critical strikes heal you for 378 health. Has a 15-second cooldown, so it has a 5-second window where it's not active, but most of the time it will be. That healing, 378, looks like small, but when we actually look at this fight was forward to the Fire Maw, so it's like a boss in the City of Ash 2 dungeon on veteran mode. Briarheart was my second biggest heal. That's how powerful this set is. There is no cooldown on the heal, they removed it a while ago. So for me, when I have Endless Hail, Caltrops and my Archer up, that's like 3 damage ticks every 1 second. 2 of them usually crit, and then it activates the heal. It's just so good. And when I look at my stats in general, when I actually go up to the maximum, I'm at 59% weapon crit, so I get a lot of crits. Very strong. Very strong. So yeah, very powerful heal. The weapon, I recommend using a sharpened one. You can get the two-handed axe or a sword for a very cheap price in the guild store. With a shitty trade, so you can just transmute it to a sharpened. Sharpened is again the best one just because it increases your damage the most on the solo build. Back bar, I run a Maelstrom bow. You can get this one in normal Maelstrom Arena. It's very easy to clear. If you want the perfect version, you need to do veteran. But it doesn't matter whether you have normal or perfect version. Because you run this on the back bar. So no matter whether you have the perfect or the imperfect one, the one piece bonus which you get from the perfect one will not be active anyway. The special bonus, the one here, will be active even on the front bar. So I activate my Endless Hail, it will damage the enemy. And even though I'm on my two-handed bar now, it will still be active. The same thing counts for my weapon damage enchantment. It's infused with an increase your weapon damage. 452 is crazy how much that is. And it's always active 100% of the time. As long as I keep my Endless Hail up. So it will reapply even though I'm not on the back bar. These are all things like long-time players will immediately know that, but as a new player you might not understand these things, so it's very important to figure that out. That's like 453 weapon damage is a lot. That's a lot of extra damage. I use Robust, you could use Infused, you could use Bloodthirsty, but I feel like Robust overall is a good choice. And you don't have to transmute anything. I use 2 health enchants, one on the head and one on the chest. Everything else is just stamina, by the way. The second set or the third set, Torgwyn. If you don't have this, you could simply replace it with Hunting's Rage. This is nice, it gives 2 weapon crit, a penetration bonus, and then when you deal critical damage you gain a stack of precision, increasing your weapon critical by 129. That's a lot. That's basically 6%. On top of that, you gain minor force, increasing your critical damage done by 10%. Group builds often use Trap to get the minor force buff, but we have better things to do like reapply cult drops and other healing buffs. So Torgwyn is a nice alternative which frees up a slot on our bars, which we really need for this setup. And again, it's 6% crit, which is also really strong. This drops in Frostvault. You can farm it in normal mode. Should be easy. Otherwise, you can run Hunting's Rage. Briarheart is from Hrothgar, but you can buy it in the guild store. The blue gear is very cheap, like blue jewelry, blue this. Maelstrom Arena, normal mode, easy. Turbo Kun is another thing. That drops in Fanglair, veteran mode. So you need to clear veteran mode. If you can't, again, Bloodspawn. Very easy to get. Good choice. Now, why do I love Turbo Kun? Turbo Kun, it's the name, sorry. When you take damage from a nearby enemy, you summon a growing pool of desecrated bile for 8 seconds. Enemies in the bile take 144 disease damage every 1 second and are afflicted with minor maim. That's the thing we want. And minor defile for 4 seconds. Reducing their damage done by 15% and healing received and health recovery by 15%. 16 seconds cooldown. This has a 75% uptime. You might think it's only 50% because it lasts 8 seconds and it has a 16-second cooldown, but that's not how it works. Tooltips are always a little bit shady, but basically, the bile lasts for 8 seconds. Every half second or every second, minor maim reapplies. So at the second 8, minor maim will proc again, and it will last for another 4 seconds. 4 seconds. So that's 8 seconds plus 4 seconds is 12 seconds. The cooldown is 16 seconds. So you basically have a window of 4 seconds which it will not be up. That's very short. So it's not 8 seconds, it's actually 12 seconds. And minor maim is really nice, because 15% damage reduction is nice. When you have like 10, 15 monsters attacking you at the same time, 15% damage reduction on each of that is very strong. It's AoE damage reduction, it's crazy. And on bosses which have really hard-hitting abilities, it's also a lot. 15% is huge debuff. So you see the choices between sets, it's just really nice. Damage mitigation through debuffs, just more damage from Torgwyn, more damage from Briarheart and the crazy amount of heals. And then we have Maelstrom, which is also more damage. There's a tier 2 and a beginner setup on the website, like I mentioned, which has easier to get sets. If you really want to solo veteran dungeons, you probably need the best in slot setup, otherwise it might become really tricky. But for overland or public dungeons or normal dungeons, you don't need the best in slot setup. That's it about the gear. Champion points real quick. You can play around here, it doesn't really matter how you distribute them. There's just a few things like you want to get the extra weapon crit 9% and stuff like that. 64, 53, 52, 40 and 61. Increase your damage down with direct damage attacks, that's like for Dizzy Swing, our execute ability, blast bones and stuff like that. Thaumaturge is for our endless hail, for detonating siphon, basically damage over time effects that we have. Piercing, extra penetration is always nice. And then crit damage. You can play around here if you want to, go for it. I do have a 300 and 600 CP setup or 500 CP setup on the website as well. Now, here is where it gets more important. Reduces the cost of roll dodge by 21%. Tumbling is very important because once again, we are a dodge roll monkey. The easiest way to avoid damage. And if you dodge roll in fast succession, you will get the green stuff on the foot, which is a dodge fatigue. So every time you dodge roll within a 4-second window, dodge roll will cost 33% more. You gotta be very careful not to overdo it. And the tumbling champion points will help with that. It will reduce the cost by a lot. That's why I also said you could actually run 2 pieces of well fitted. Shadow Ward, also nice to reduce the block cost. Mooncalf for extra stamina recovery. Tenacity for heavy attacks. We restore a lot of resources through heavy attacks with this setup. I will get into that in a second. Then you can put some into bashing if you want to and warlord. The red champion points mitigate a lot of damage. Quick recovery, extra healing, then 49, 49, 48. Just to reduce physical damage, elemental damage and damage over time effects. I have 31 in Spell Shield to give me a little bit more spell resistance and 61 in Ironclad. It's a pretty basic setup, you can play around if you want. Let's take a look at the skill setups, passives and stuff like that, which is very important for the overall setup because Brawler, it's a very juicy ability. And there's just a lot of things that synergize with each other. So let's start with the Grave Lord skill line. We use Blighted Blast Bones, we use Pestilent Colossus, we use Skeletal Archer and we use Detonating Siphon. So we have a lot of abilities from here. Because there's just so much good abilities. First off, Blighted Blast Bones. It deals so much damage, it's your best single target and AoE ability, so you always want to reactivate that the moment it's actually gone. Another nice thing, now our cost is 2k. When I actually activate this, and then the thing dies, it only costs 1k now. Well, what happened here? Magic. Reusable parts. When your Blast Bone, Skeletal Mage or Spirit Mender dies, the cost of your next Blast Bone, Skeletal Mage or Spirit Mender is reduced by 50%. That's a very strong passive. A lot of people don't know about that, so you get a lot of cost reduction. Next up we have the ultimate that we use. This is by far the best ultimate in terms of like damage. First off, it deals so much damage, like 10k, 11k and 12k more or less. When we are buffed up, it's even more. And it also applies major vulnerability. 30% more damage taken. So you drop this on the enemy will take 30% more damage for 8 seconds. That's crazy. On the back bar, we are using Skeletal Archer. Deals nice damage, leaves a corpse on the ground, and keeps Dismember up. While a Gravelord ability is active, your spell and physical penetrations are increased by 1500. So again, just more damage. More damage. Detonating Siphon, I like to call this your flex spot. You don't necessarily need it. It's a nice damage over time effect that you can use, which constantly deals damage. But if you don't want, you don't need to use it. You could, like, I guess you could call this your flex spot. You could use other abilities there. For example, like if you want more damage mitigation, you could use Summoner's Armor instead of that one there. Because I don't use this here. I will get to that in a second. There's a few other nice passives. Death Knell gives us 20%, basically 10% more critical damage in Execute for each of these ability slots. So we have 1 and 2. It would be 20% more. So in Execute, we are closer to like 80%. Like when we are fully buffed with Zog, when it's at 59, we can add another 20 on top. And Rapid Rod increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 15%. But these things are just hella good. Very, very strong. Bone Tyrant. The only ability that we really use is Ravenous Goliath as a backup ultimate. When we transform into this, we have like 60k health. And you're not going to die. There will also be an aura around you that absorbs health from the enemies and gives it to you. So it also functions as a healing. It deals damage, gives you 60k health, and it also heals you. It's really strong. But most of the times, if you want to push damage, you should use the Colossus. This one is just as a fail-safe backup ulti. Now, why do I not use Summoner's Armor? You can use this if you want Major Resolve to increase your physical and spell resistance. The reason is simple. I use Spirit Guardian from the Living Death skill line, which mitigates 10% more damage. We'll talk about that in a second. But technically, you could use this here if you really want. Few things to mention. So, let's see, this one mostly. Last Gasp. 1250 health. You always have to have this active. The other ones are not that important, but this one here, you want the extra health. Living Death. We use the Spirit Guardian on the back bar. It heals for a little bit. It doesn't cost anything to use. And while active, 10% of the damage you take is transferred to the Spirit instead. So it functions as a damage absorb pet. And both of these are all of my abilities on the back bar have like 14 seconds, 16 seconds, 16 seconds, 14 seconds. So most of the time I just reapply all at the same time when I'm on the back bar, if I have the time to do so. Another nice passive, we have Curative Curse, increases your healing a little bit. Then you get a little bit more ultimate regen and Undead Confederate. This is very important. While you have Blastbone, Skeletal Mage or Spirit Mender active, your magic and stamina recovery is increased by 200. 1370. I activate this. 1600. That's a lot of extra recovery for just having a summon up, which will also deal damage or heal you and so on. So you see how everything synergizes really well together. Two-handed... How did it go? Two-handed skill line. Brawler is the most powerful ability that you can use on a solo stamina build. When I hit one enemy, I get the 6.7k shield. If I hit like 5-6 enemies, I get the 20k shield every time I use this ability. What else do you need? That's how I'm basically not dying in the veteran dungeons. You just keep this up. You get the shields you get, they're insane from this thing. It's crazy. And it also deals damage on top of that. So always use Brawler. If you drop low on health, it's time to use Brawler, you will get the shield. Nobody can touch your health. Before I swap to the back bar, I always use Brawler, so I get the shield when I'm on the back bar. Dizzy Swing is the next ability that we use. If you're doing overland or public dungeons, you can use Weapon School, no problem. However, in actually difficult content, you want to use Dizzy Swing. And the reason for that is because it applies off balance to the enemy. So it takes 0.8 seconds to cast, then it will apply off balance. And when you follow up with a heavy attack, you get twice the resources back. What do I mean by that? Every time you do a heavy attack, you restore around 3000 stamina. Yes, heavy attacks restore resources. As a new player, that might be a little bit weird, but you gotta burn that into your brain. And show that really quick. I don't know. There we go. 11k, bam, 14k. Just from a heavy attack. So I get 3k. Now if the enemy is off balance, I get twice the amount back. Let's see, maybe it was still on cooldown. 25, 30.5, yeah. That's around 6k that you get back. Off-balanced enemies return twice the amount of resources. Off-balanced has a cooldown though, keep that in mind, so you can't just spam it. But you can use it on different enemies. That's why often when you actually watch gameplay footage from me, after I use Dizzy Swing, I use heavy attacks to regain a buttload of resources. That's how I manage my resources so easily. Then there is always also potions and stamina recovery and so on. But yeah, that's why Dizzy Swing is so strong. The off balance is powerful. Reverse Slice. The next ability is a Execute, which also has splash damage. So when you use this on the lowest health target, all the enemies around it will also get damage. That's why we don't use the other morph, because you want the splash damage. Very strong on trash packs. You could use Rally, for example, if you don't have access to potions, which give you the major brutality buff, weapon damage 20%. You can use Rally. Gives you the same thing, weapon damage buff 20%, and also minor endurance, which will increase your recovery, stamina recovery a little bit more. And it also heals you. But usually I recommend using the potions. That's it for the two-handed abilities. Another perk I want to talk about is Battle Rush. Increases your stamina recovery by 30% for 10 seconds after killing a target. So when you're killing a target, when you have two-handed equip, you will just get 30% more stamina recovery. That's gonna boost the crap out of our stamina really strong. You just see how things synergize really well with each other. It's crazy. But obviously reading the tooltip of stuff helps. Next up, the bow on the back bar. The only thing you really need to know is Endless Hail is really strong, especially with the Maelstrom weapon, and it keeps proccing our weapon damage enchantment, even when we're on the front bar. Hasty Retreat. When you're trying to run away or just get a speed buff, you want to dodge roll on your back bar, because that way, when you dodge rolling on your bow, you get Hasty Retreat, which will give you Major Expedition for 4 seconds, giving you 30% faster speed. It's just when you have to walk to the next trash bag and so on, this is a nice thing to know. In a boss fight, it obviously doesn't really matter whether you dodge roll on a two-hander or the bow bar. So that's this. A few other things I want to mention. Medium armor passives, they're very strong. More crit bonus. Then you get stamina recovery, 24% in our case. 12% stamina cost reduction. This one doesn't really matter that much. 15% more weapon damage. Then also roll dodge cost reduction. There's just so much good things. And we run one heavy piece, so we get a little bit more health, some sustain, and a little bit more resistances. There's nothing interesting here. Fighter's Guild, it's mostly interesting to banish the Wicked because you get faster ultimate regen. You could use Camo Hunter if you want to. So once again, potions. Grants you Mage's Savagery, which gives you 10% weapon critical. If you don't use these potions, if you use the normal potions, Camo Hunter gives the same buff, so you could use this instead. Undaunted, it's a nice thing to have, not mandatory, but it gives you 4% overall more stats. Now the big boy question in the room, a lot of people are like, Alcast, why are you using Echoing Vigor and not Resolving Vigor? It makes no sense. Of course it makes sense. This one here lasts 10 seconds, whereas Resolving Vigor only lasts 4 seconds. Resolving Vigor overheals you by a crazy amount. Echoing Vigor is more than enough to heal you. So would you rather activate this every 10 seconds and you can actually deal damage? Or would you actually rather use Resolving Vigor and just keep spamming Vigor because it's only 4 seconds long and you barely have time to do damage? This one heals for more than enough anyway, so there is no point to use the short duration one. Because you will have to reactivate sooner. So the reason why I use this, it heals for more than enough and it has a longer duration, so we have time to do other stuff, actually dealing damage and so on. That's with most builds. The only build I actually use the other morph is for my Stam sword, because it just has a lot of other ways to heal. But yeah, Echoing Vigor all the way for this setup. Cult drops. The only reason we use this on the back bar is because it applies Major Fracture to the enemy. And you mentioned me before saying it lasts 14 seconds, but the duration here tells you it's only 10 seconds. So it's the same principle as Turbokun. It lasts for 10 seconds, but Major Fracture gets reapplied every 1 second. So it's 10 seconds plus 4 seconds, where Major Fracture lasts. So it doesn't last 10 seconds, but 14 seconds. We don't really care about the damage, we mostly care about the fracture uptime. That's why this is nice. 14 seconds, 16, 14, 16. Just, we have so much time to be on the front bar. That's Cult Drops. I talked about this, and once again, the Alchemy passive, medicinal use. I have a leveling guide. It takes 15 minutes to level this up if you know how. On the website, link in the description. The sooner you learn this, the better, because you will have to do this on all your characters. This is a passive you don't want to miss out, because you're gonna be a potion drinker, like a Skoma addict, drinking Skoma. Do you smoke Skoma? I'm not sure. I don't know. Anyway. To reiterate, you need to learn to dodge roll. You need to learn when to block in the right moment. You need to learn when you can heal. When you want to use your brawler to shield yourself. You need to keep up your damage over time effects, your back bar things, because so much sustain, healing and stuff is connected to it. You gotta keep using potions. Get the juicy buffs, you need to use the right buff food, and you should get around 19k health. The way we reach 19k health, there's a few things. So we have the Orc, 1k max health. Then I have 2 health enchantments here. Because we're a Necromancer. In Bone Tyrant we have Last Gasp, which is another 1250. 10 points into health attribute. Undaunted, which gives us another 4% overall resources. We have the Heavy Armor passive, which is another 2%. There's a lot of things to increase your health. And otherwise, if you want to get more, you can just pump. Take out stamina and pump it into health. That's simple. There's a lot of things to learn. I would recommend watching my City of Ash 2 veteran run. So you really can understand and analyze, okay, now he's doing this because he's low on health, so he's dodge rolling. Usually before I dodge roll, I use my healing ability. Because when you dodge roll and there's no healing active, you're not gonna get any health. But when I have healing abilities active and I dodge roll, while I'm dodge rolling, the enemy can't really hit me, but I will heal myself. There's a lot of things. You will have to learn this. The more content you do, the better you will get. That's always how it is. You can always ask me on twitch.tv/alcasthq. I'm live streaming a lot as well. Or join our community Discord where you can always ask questions. I will do more builds like this. I have a lot of solo builds on the website, so I hope I could give you kind of an understanding what's going on. And if it was too much, maybe let me know in the comment section below, like, what can I do better with my next build video? Because it's a lot of information to take in, because the build and all these things are synergizing really well together, and it can be complex to understand if you're a new player. But then once again, a beginner setup is on the website that should get you started. So I guess if you're really new, check out the beginner stuff on the website. If you want to watch a few other videos, you can do that right here. Make sure to not forget to subscribe and hit that juicy like button. Thanks for watching and see ya soon. Cheers.